Hello guys, I'm TheSphinx, and today we are going to start a new series of tutorials where we are going to create our custom RAT, remote administrator tool. We will use Visual Basic to create this kind of malware. This because the API interaction is simpler and is easier to create cool GUI. And we can start now creating a new project where we will develop the server side of our RAT. So you need Visual Studio to use and compile with Visual Basic, and you can download your version on the official website. You can use, even you can select the student version, and you can also select the Express Edition. I don't know if it still exists with Visual Studio 2017, but you're free to select the version you prefer. So, after you download the Visual Studio, install it, and we can start creating a new project. So just go on File, New Project. We're going to use the App Windows Forms format, and we are going to use the Framework 2.0. This is because we will use some APIs, some DLLs that are those are available only with .NET Framework 2.0. So if you want, you can use the 4.7.1 or even the last one that I think is 4.7.5, I think. So this is up to you, but remember that some API may not work properly with other kind of frameworks. And the 2.0 is the oldest one, so maybe you can use some functions that are still available for the older operating systems, such as Windows Vista, XP, or whatever. So we can create our first project. I will use a random name, but I don't want to use, project name like tutorials or something like that. So I'm going to name it NJRAT. Yes. Select the folder where we want to save the file, the project file, and there you go. Now he's creating. Perfect. So today we are not going to see the GUI part. We are going to create just the socket server, because I'm going to upload small pieces of these tutorials, because my network sucks. So the first thing, we need a socket server class, so we will add to our project a new file, new class for the exactly, and we will call it SK. That means socket. The format we are going to use is based on the NJRAT kind of style, because we're going to create something really similar, or something maybe more near to SPYGATE or RATs like that, like those. And now we can start creating our first functions that will allow to us to handle the packet incoming and all the connections. So first of all, we need our variables. So we're going to use the region command to make everything organized. So fields, and inside here we're going to declare our variables. So the first ones are private as TCP listener. Yeah, you need to import the system.NET. Come on. You need to import the system.NET library. why it was so hard. Yeah, I imported season.NET and all .NET sockets. My fault. So let's continue. So now we need to declare a variable called skt. It's just an integer, and we will see later its usage. Now we're going to declare our socket variable that we will use, will handle a max of 999 connections, and we will declare it as socket. Now we need more or less, I think, 2-3 events that will handle the disconnection, connection, and the data parsing events. So we will declare them as events. So public event data. We will pass sock as integer. This is our magic variable. We will use this kind of variable in almost all our functions. So the second parameter is a byte array. Now we will declare the second event called disconnected by val sock as integer. This will, as you can see, will handle the disconnect event. And the last one is event connected. No, sorry. So now the last variable we were going to declare is the packet splitter string. So we will use this variable to split our strings. So I can say A, B, C, D, whatever, but I will use THERAT splitter. This is just a comment to remind me that this is the splitter. And we're done for our first variables, so now we can create our methods. I create another region called methods. So when you're done writing inside a region, you can just click on that, and it will compress all the fields. Now the first function is the start function, where we will go to starting our socket server. So start by val p as integer, and we will say s equals new TCP listener p, that means the port. And we will call s.start. Yes, this method is deprecated because I'm using Visual Studio 2017, but you can just, correct following their tips or whatever, just check out the doc. And now we can keep going, define T as new trading dot thread. So we'll use this variable as thread, address of DMP, comma DMP dot 10, max stack size, and T dot start. We're going to call it as new thread in order to avoid the blocking of the GUI or the current sub anyway. So we create our main function that after we are going to overload it, and we will define the first parameter as integer and the second one as string. I don't want in uppercase or lowercase. So sock will be the integer that will reference the socket list, and the s will be just the string we're going to send. So we will call our overload event, and we will say sock and sb. There will be a function that we will define later in another module for convert the string to a byte array, we are going to keep everything organized, and we are going to say subsend by val sock as integer, by val b as byte array. And now we can say try. In the exception, we are going to say if we cannot send a string to the client, we can say that the client has been disconnected, we drop the connection, so we disconnect the client. After we're going to declare this sub. So we're going to write to the IO memory stream, so we're going to send the stream of the socket, and write b dot comma 0 b dot length. So this means that we are going to send our byte array on the memory stream via memory stream. This is just, you know, the offset, and the last is the length of our byte, so we can say that we are sending this kind of length. And we also send another thing that will be the packet splitter, so we can send a packet splitter, and sending always the offset is the offset, yeah, the offset has 0, and spl.length. The last one will be sk as socket. We will select the current one that we will select from our list view in the main form that we'll place here. You'll see in the next tutorials. And we will say send to array, comma 0, comma and length, comma socket flags, comma socket flags dot none. And for the last part, we're going to say m.dispose, so we're going to replace all the resources we use in this function under the m variable. Now we're ready to write the other function that will be private, so we will use it just under the socket server class. And we're going to say new skt new socket as integer. And we're going to declare a label that we will allow us to go to this part. You know, we will step here. We will use the goto instruction, that is the jump, such as the assembly. And we're going to say threading dot thread dot current thread dot sleep. So we'll say sleep for 1 millisecond just to be sure. We will say skt plus equals 1. So if someone is connecting in the same moment, we will say sleep. And we're going to say if skt equals skt dot length, this is just the control. Then we're going to say skt equals 0. And now we're going to say go to rep. Now if online dot contains, online will be our list that we'll use to store all the active connections. We're going to define that under this function. Contains skt equal false, then add it. So this is obvious. If the socket doesn't exist in the list, just add it. Skt return skt dot toString dot close. And now we're going just to return a value for our function, and we will return the new socket position. Now we can define our list called public online as new list of integer. Now we can say online clients. Now we can keep going, creating another function that will define all the settings for our socket server. So you know the max buffer, receive buffer, and so on. So write sub pmd. I'm going to use the same kind of names of the command NJRAT, SPYGATE, so you can refer to them source code if you don't understand something. Now we call redeem sk999, just to be sure, and I will say another re. Yeah, current thread command dot sleep, same thought of this kind of function, okay? And now I will say if s dot pending. So if the socket is online, is active, we can define sock as integer equals new skt, sk sock equals s dot accept socket, so we can say accept the connections, and we will say sk dot sock dot receive buffer size equals to 999. I'm going to set a really big value in order to receive all the data packet length. The same thing I'm going to say with dot send buffer size equals 999. sk.sock. These are all private properties of the socket variable. So we'll say socket timeout equals 9000 sk sock dot send timeout equals 9000. In the end, we're going to say dim t as new trading dot thread address of rc, that will be our receive function, 10 max stack size, t dot start, and raise the event connected sock. So we're going to say once someone is connected, just raise the event. So you can send connected to the function we're going to develop later. Alright, so we can create the public sub disconnect function by both sock as integer. And now here we're going to handle all the disconnect events. So try sk sock disconnect false. So we're going to say try to disconnect the socket and remove it. Now we're going to say remove it from our list. Actually, we cannot remove the socket from our list because we are using a list of integers. So we can just set the value to null and make a control in order when you try to send a packet, it will say disconnect. So we will set the value to null. So we can say sk sock. Did I lose myself in the previous talk? I think so. Yeah. So we're just saying that the variable, the current socket is nothing, so has been disconnected. And now we create the longest function, so sub rc, so as integer. Now we're going to say dim as new IO.memory stream. I'm going to be really fast in this function because it's really long, but you can easily understand the workflow, you know, the work just following the code. But I will try to explain if I can. This is just longer, is the receive, and this is not actually the most important function of our socket server. So just if sk sock dot all less one net sockets yeah dot select mode dot select read and server say has, I say end, sk sock dot available 0 go to e. Now we are going to define the e label here. Accept go to e cc equals 0, and if another try, if sk sock is not nothing, then is not nothing. If sk sock dot connected, then the b sk sock dot available +1 as byte sk sock dot receive. This is just long. This will parse all the common connection. It will do all the controls in order to make sure that the client is online and so on. Sockets, socket flags, dot no, and dot write b dot b dot length. If bs will be another function that we will develop always later, and dot to array dot contains SPL, so we will parse the packet, searching for the packet splitter string in a as array, come on, array equals new fx, that will be a function that we will develop in our other module, dot to array dot SPL, raise data sock as 0, and dispose, always release all the things you didn't use or you used. If I document two, and write the first the second value of our array, 1 dot length threading dot thread dot current thread dot sleep 1, and in the end go to RR. We will go always to develop, or maybe we can place a thing here. Yeah. And so we're going to R, we're going to say endif endif, another endif, and after that we're going to say else, go to E. So we are saying that if socket go to E, and we can say also here else go to E, yeah, and always in the exception go to E. That's cool. So now we can say, and if catch exception, go to rel in order to return to the previous, and we will say E, disconnect sock. What the fuck is he doing? Try online.remove sock. We don't actually need the exception because it could raise anytime, but we can raise the event disconnected with sock parameter. Perfect. We need just one last function and one last variable in order to complete our socket server. Just remember to save everything, because if your computer, all of your Visual Studio crashes, you're fucked. And we can declare our last private OIP 999 as string, and our last function we will public for first, and we'll call it IP, so we can refer as s or sk.ip. Using this function, we can retrieve the IP address. We can make ref. We can retrieve the IP address of the selected index in our online list. Try OIP sock equals split sk sock dot remote endpoint dot to string, so we can retrieve the remote IP address separated with the double points, and we will say just give me the 0, or otherwise it will return the port. You can just create another function called port, just set this to 1, it will split by double points, and we will retrieve the port from the original string that will use this kind of format. Alright, so we are going to retrieve this thing, and we're going to say just return this shit. Perfect. In the exception, we are going to return a string, a generic string. So if the sock is nothing, so if the client has been disconnected, just return an empty, or I don't know, x, yes, x dot x dot x dot x. That means that it's empty. Otherwise, if there's something else going on, maybe he is connecting, just return OIP sock. And there we go. So we created our socket server class. Yes, as you can see, we have some errors, but this is normal because the fix will be a function that we will develop in another function. We will keep everything organized, as I said, and oh yeah, I call it DNP this one and PND this one. So you can just say PND, it's the same thing. So now we have 4 errors, more or less, yes. And these 4 errors are all functions that we didn't create yet. But we are ready. So for the first tutorial, this is all. We're going to, we will keep this stuff in the next video. We're going to create maybe the first part of the GUI of another class. See ya in the next tutorial, guys.